Welcome, everyone. So, I'm going to talk a bit about the spiritual concept of surrender. In many ways, if I were to say to you that surrender is really the only spiritual instruction that you need, that sounds wonderful. It is very true in its simplicity. But rightfully, the response to that is going to be how, why, what is some actual actionable ways that I can surrender? And what does surrendering truly mean? So there's a lot of nuance to that very simple instruction. So I'm going to talk about surrendering in two very important ways today. The first is that surrendering is an actionable thing. It is an active process. And what that means is that when people are undergoing the spiritual awakening process, whatever type of spiritual awakening that they're going through, what happens is that energies that are latent in our system come to the forefront. Basically, what is not working in our lives makes it itself apparent. And so this is very much a double-edged sword because most of us go around in a rather large sort of um, swath of denial. We go through our lives, maybe on some level, being aware of the difficulties, the imbalances, the disconnections in our lives and our systems, but we may not know what to do about it. We may not be in a place to do anything about it. And so when somebody is spiritual awakening, those things come up and come forward, and we become very aware of them. And so this is both kind of a blessing and a difficulty because the blessing is that we don't have any choice but to acknowledge some of these patterns, beliefs, conflicts within ourselves and within the world because they make themselves readily apparent. The difficulty is being able to sense them and see them to the extent of doing something about them. So becoming aware of them, acknowledging them, and honestly being willing to acknowledge them is really the bulk of the work. Denial is one of our most primitive reactions to stress. It is one of the ways that we get through our lives. But the thought of denial and kind of coming out of denial means acknowledging what is out of balance, what is going wrong in our lives. And if we are willing to do this, what happens is that we surrender our wounds, we end up surrendering our victimhood, we end up surrendering emotions we've held on to, beliefs, conditioning, stories we've been told. Ultimately, we deconstruct and let go and surrender so many things that we cling to because we believe that they make up our identity. And so there is an opportunity to surrender there. This is the first level of surrender I'll be talking about, which is a continual process of acknowledging what is arising in your system, what is out of balance within yourself, and then taking the necessary steps to course correct, to acknowledge it, to work through it, to heal it, to learn the skills and tools and take on the responsibility. So again, another blessing curse sort of thing, because it is a rare gift for people to take true responsibility for themselves, to recognize truly the sort of power we have to deconstruct ourselves, to let go, to surrender. Even the story, the identity of who we believe that we are, who we believe that other people are, what we believe the world is, all of that can experience change if we are willing to look at what is not feeling right, what is not feeling good, what is feeling out of balance in our lives, what is really showing itself to us as being out of balance. And so, in this way, surrender is a very active process of seeing what is coming up in front of you, both from within and without, and being willing to surrender both emotions, trauma, conditioning, beliefs, thoughts, everything that we experience until what we experience is felt and known and true instead of believed. So the second type of surrender that I'm going to talk about goes a bit deeper, even though surrendering stories is a very deep level of being. And that is surrendering control. Ultimately, I find that the instruction of surrender is to get us to move from a very human-centric, self-absorbed sort of state into recognizing that we are a part of things. We are a thread in a massive loom. We are a drop in the ocean, whatever metaphor sort of serves you best. Um, and so prior to awakening, we tend to believe that we are the main character. We only are concerned with our own needs, with people who think and act exactly like ourselves. And through spiritual awakening, that bubble sort of opens and widens until we experience stages of oneness, of union, where we feel connected to every person we meet, to the earth, to the sky, to the divine, to ourselves, to all that is. That is generally a very good way to look at any spiritual path, is essentially moving further and further into union or connected states. And so what gets in the way of this, if we're looking at kind of the ground floor, the deepest part of the ocean? I always use a lot of ocean metaphors, but if we were looking to the ocean floor of what we're really trying to do, a lot of it has to do about control. We try to control other people, we try to control ourselves, we try to control the world, we try to control that which is uncontrollable. And so you can get to a certain point where you recognize that first it typically comes that, I always think of the serenity prayer, for those of you who are familiar with 12-step programs, and it's basically like, you know, letting go of what we cannot control and taking control of what we can control. And so for people, there is often first an awareness of that, is that we can only control so many things in our individual lives, and a letting go of what we cannot control. Then people can awaken to the reality that what we dislike, um, or hate or are triggered by in other people really has to do with control. We are not in a state of acceptance of other people. We are in a state of wishing that they would be something else, wanting for them to be a particular way, for us to inwardly approve of them or like them, on some level. And this has everything to do with control. If we are willing to look at this layer of things, to recognize that we are looking to control other people so that they look and act and behave, like our personal morals would want them to be. And in some cases, I will say we have wonderful ideas for how others should behave and live their lives. But if we are willing to let go of that control, to surrender, to accept people exactly how they are, that doesn't mean that we think that every person is a beam of sunshine. What it means is a certain amount of equanimity, which basically means that we accept somebody exactly who they are. And so that equanimity, that sort of neutrality, or even going into stages of love, connection with other people, come from surrendering this desire to control other people. Because that is what our hatred, what our upset, on a deep spiritual level about others is really regarding, is our inability to let go of that illusion of control, our inability to surrender, to let people be as they. And so, if we were to go to an even deeper level of things, is that you can get to a place where you recognize that so many spiritual and religious paths, forms of thought, forms of belief, forms of conditioning have everything to do with our fear of being out of control. So it is an attempt to control chaos. It is an attempt to corral, to organize that which cannot be controlled. Especially if we're talking about spirituality, we're talking about things that can be felt, can be known, but at a certain point cannot be mentally fully described. They have to be known in a bodily way. This is why I talk all the time about embodiment, because you can talk in a disconnected way about spirituality all the time, but if it isn't embodied, it won't truly connect you. It won't truly get you to a place where you can experience things like surrendering control of other people, surrendering thoughts of you being in control, all of that sort of stuff. So, in my first book, The Spiritual Awakening Guide, I talked about the conditioned layers of reality. And the sort of highest levels of conditioned layers of reality have to do with myth and story. They are how we construct our existence, they are how we construct our reality. And so, what religions and spiritualities have all done in their own way is attempt to describe the indescribable, to describe the ineffable. And in doing so, there is some measure of control that is enacted. And so there can be a point where you're willing to let go of all of the methods of organization and simply sit with um, uncertainty, sit with the fact that control is an illusion, sit even with energies of chaos. And so, what happens when we fully let go of control on a spiritual level is that things can fully flow through us, that things can come and go out of our lives. We can truly understand the concept of impermanence, and we can stop sort of grasping onto states that are not meant to be permanent. Even if we experience the utmost bliss, it is a waveform. It is something that comes through us, that flows in and out like a tide. It is not something that can be controlled. It is not something we can grasp onto. And so the ego very much likes to grasp onto spiritual things, especially organizing spirituality, because then we feel a sense of mastery. Feel a sense of, oh, we have conquered this. Our inner conquistador sort of is able to attempt to plant its flag and be like, I know exactly what will happen after death, or I know exactly what will happen with spirit, or what spirituality, what enlightenment, whatever spiritual term you want to put in there is all about. And one of the hardest things is to let go of those stories, to let go of that type of control. And so we're talking on a very existential level here, but we have so much fear that underlies that organization, that desire to conquer, to know, to claim mastery. And what happens if we let all of that sort of stuff go? If we surrender all of that, is that we can allow for those waves to flow in and through us, and we can recognize ourselves as a small part of our totality, of infinity, that we are not the center of things. We are not in control of over everything. We do not know everything. And there is authentically a real relief in letting all of that go and just going into states of being, states of knowing, states of feeling, where we no longer need to feel like we have mastery and control over everything. So that is the second aspect of surrender, is letting go of control on deeper and deeper levels until the fight ends, until there's no longer parts of us that are struggling, that are fighting, that are looking to control. This is the sort of passive principle of surrender, is that we can simply be in stillness, and things can flow through us, in and out of us, like a tide coming to shore and going back out to sea again. So I hope that was helpful for you. Feel free to write below if you have any thoughts or questions about the topic of surrender yourself.